It's Philosophy Talk.
Shall we play a game?
Oh, love to.
Are games just a fun pastime, or is there something important about them?
Hans plays with Lottie, Lottie plays with Jane, Jane plays with Willie, Willie is happy again.
Games can concentrate the possibility of these moments of your own elegance.
Our guest is Thi Nguyen, author of Games, Agency as Art.
I'm not worried about games making serial killers. I'm worried about games making Wall Street bankers.
If looks could kill, they probably will. In games without frontiers, or without tears.
What exactly is a game?
Do you mean like fancy graphics?
I get it why kids play games, but why do grown-ups?
Ready to play some games? Let's do it.
What's in a game?
Coming up on Philosophy Talk.
Game over, man. It's game over.
Are games just a waste of time?
Can they equip us with important life skills?
Or do games make us more antisocial?
Welcome to Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything.
Except your intelligence. I'm Josh Landy.
And I'm Ray Briggs. We're coming to you via the studios of KALW San Francisco.
Continuing conversations that begin at Philosopher's Corner on the Stanford campus, where Ray teaches philosophy and I direct the Philosophy and Literature Initiative.
Today we're asking, what's in a game?
I love games, Ray. They are such a great diversion from the fate of the world. Plus, they're really important for kids. I think about all those social skills a 5-year-old picks up just by playing hide and seek with their friends.
But we're not kids. For adults like us, games are a waste of time. Grown-ups should be out doing and good and building stuff, not sitting on their couch playing Nintendo.
Hey, hashtag not all games, Ray. We grown-ups can learn stuff too.
Oh, like what? Like how to shoot birds into pigs?
Isn't that a useful skill? but seriously, come on. I mean, games like that can improve your hand-to-eye coordination.
Right. They increase your ability to, like, crush candy faster. Whoop-de-doo. I'm sure that's a skill that will serve you well later in life.
All right, look, maybe my Candy Crush skills don't carry over, but my Tetris skills might. I mean, maybe they could make me better at packing my car when I go on a camping trip.
Oh, please. When do you ever go camping, Josh? You're kidding yourself if you think that video games are good for your physical skills. The fact is, you're sitting on your couch all day playing virtual soccer when you could be out on the actual field.
Well, even if that were true, there are still benefits for the brain. Plenty of games teach us spatial reasoning, vocabulary, problem-solving skills.
You're just teaching yourself to be distracted. That rots your brain.
I don't know. I think there are games out there that challenge you and give you real stuff to chew on. They get you to think hard about real moral issues. I think those games are good for us.
3 words, Josh. Grand Theft Auto.
Okay, fair enough. But I think you're being too narrow about what games are. I mean, most people aren't just playing alone in their room. They're out on the basketball court with their friends. They're playing mahjong with their family. Even when they're on the computer, they're doing multiplayer role-playing games with people all over the world.
Great. So now 20 people are wasting their lives.
No, they're collaborating. They're gaining important skills of cooperation, deliberation, collective action, compromise.
Compromise? Have you seen what actually happens in sports? When Jeff Gillooly tried to break Nancy Kerrigan's leg, that did not look like compromise. That was like Don Corleone compromising with the Tatalias.
Okay, that was bad, I admit. But thankfully, that kind of thing is pretty rare. I mean, most of the time in sports like that, we learn to respect our opponents, like Federer and Nadal or Everton and Navratilova. I think that's an amazing benefit. Like, imagine thinking of your rival as a worthy foe, helping you to raise your game.
Oh, okay, fine, but that's just sports. Most games are a waste of time. People sitting around a table, pretending to be barbarians and wizards, slaying imaginary monsters with fake enchanted swords.
On behalf of the entire Dungeons and Dragons community, I take offense at those remarks, Ray. That's that's a game that involves a ton of creativity. If you're the dungeon master, it's a real workout for your imagination.
Yeah, but what if they poured all that imaginative energy into actually helping the world? I guess they're not hurting anybody, but what they're doing is still pretty pointless.
Even if that were true, would that really be so bad? The philosopher Theodore Adorno had that great line about useless activities pushing back against the tyranny of our profit obsessed world. Let's fight the man by having fun.
Well, at least our discussion is going to be fun. We've got a great guest, Thi Nguyen from the University of Utah, author of Games, Agency is Art. Maybe we can ask him about the board game pandemic, which, perhaps not surprisingly, is hugely popular right now.
Or we can ask about Monopoly, which has been popular since the dawn of time. We sent our roving philosophical reporter, Holly J. McDeed, on a quest to find out the origins of Monopoly and what it was originally meant to teach us. She files this report.
Why don't we play Monopoly?
You know something is popular when it makes it into The Simpsons.
Which version? We've got Star Wars Monopoly, Rasta Monopoly, Gallipolopoly, Edna Krabopoly.
In this one, the family sits down to play Monopoly, a game where the goal is to force competitors into bankruptcy by buying and developing pieces of property.
That's it, baby. Welcome to Marvin Gardens.
Oh, we'll see about that. 1, 2, 3, go!
Things get out of hand pretty quickly. Maggie stuffs houses in her cheeks, Bart makes hotels out of Legos, and so on.
You little...
We all know Monopoly can go on for days and end in tears. Needless to say, Monopoly does not always bring out the best in people, as shown in a trailer for a motion picture based on the game.
Do not pass go. You didn't pay the luxury tax. Go to jail. Do not collect $200. I thought this was just a game. Life is a game. This game never ends.
Let it be known that you can spend years of your life writing a book about Monopoly, but your family will still question whether you have the rules right or not.
Like zillions of kids, Mary Pilon grew up playing Monopoly. She was a Wall Street Journal reporter after the 2008 financial crash.
And I kept thinking of the version of the Monopoly origin story that was tucked into my board game and so many others, that it was invented during, the 1930s by this guy who was down on his luck.
Pilon searched the internet, looking for more details, but she kept hitting dead ends. Instead, she learned about an economics professor named Ralph Anspach. In the 70s, he had become locked in a trademark fight for the right to sell his own game called Anti-Monopoly, so she called him up, thinking he might know something.
He immediately got back to me and was like, oh yeah, I've waited 40 years for someone to ask me about this. It's, the history is really complicated, and it wasn't invented by a guy in the Great Depression, it was invented by this woman.
And that's how Pilon learned about the real mastermind behind Monopoly, Elizabeth McGee, a game designer before women had the right to vote.
She was a very outspoken advocate for women's rights. She had written poetry and short stories. She had worked as a stenographer and also had patented a kind of typewriting gadget.
And McGee was obsessed with the political economist Henry George.
And I won't get wildly into single tax theory here.
The idea behind single tax theory is to tax land and only land, so that the burden of taxes falls on wealthy landlords. McGee taught these ideas after work, but wanted to reach more people. So she created what she called the landlord's game to communicate these ideas with the masses.
She's really interested in this national conversation about income inequality. And there's, when you read the newspapers at the time, there's a lot of talk of the monopolists. So you think about the railroad barons, the oil barons.
In the landlord's game, when players land in a, quote, absolute necessity space, like bread, coal, or shelter, players have to pay $5 into the public treasury. And this game includes 2 sets of rules. In one, the goal is to crush opponents.
Oh boy, I'm rich!
In the other, everyone is rewarded when wealth is created.
You get a car! You get a car! You get a car!
As gamers make their way around the board, they perform labor and earn wages, and eventually get to retire. It's meant to show a more egalitarian version of the world can exist. McGee patented the landlord's game in 1904.
And it's played by this who's who of left-wing America for 30 plus years. Upton Sinclair, author of The Jungle, plays the game. Some of the early founders of the ACLU play the game. It's played at Harvard, it's played at Columbia.
But the monopolistic rules were more popular, and that's the version Charles Darrow played, adopted, then sold to Parker Brothers, making a fortune during the Great Depression. It sold like wildfire at a time when people were losing their homes and banks were collapsing.
Board games are, they're cultural artifacts, but they're also theater, they're also role-playing. And so I think that Monopoly is an incredibly powerful game at that time because people could be rich. They could, own property. They could do these things that maybe in real life were not necessarily as accessible as they had thought.
Darrow became the first millionaire game designer in history and was credited as the inventor of Monopoly for a long time.
That's how the history was told until this economist in the 1970s gets, basically a cease and desist. He was making a game called Anti-Monopoly. And he goes, wait a minute, how can someone have a monopoly on Monopoly? And that kicks off his 10-year-long legal battle.
It's largely because of this legal battle that we know this history at all. When Hasbro, the company that now sells Monopoly, released Ms. Monopoly, Jimmy Kimmel and many others ridiculed it.
Women, they get $1,900 to start with, the men get $1,500, and women get $240 when they pass go. Men only get $200 when they pass go. It just sounds like a good way to make your son hate your daughter, really.
When Hasbro released Ms. Monopoly, they didn't mention McGee. She had died in obscurity. One of her last jobs was with the U.S. Office of Education. She developed a reputation as an elderly typist with a lot to say about making games.
These hotels are made of Legos. Bart, you're cheating!
When it comes to Monopoly, the best among us often lose. For Philosophy Talk, I'm Holly J. McDeed.
Thanks for that great report, Holly. Gosh, such a bitter irony that Lizzie McGee ended up having her anti-capitalist game stolen and sold for a fortune. I'm Josh Landy. With me is my Stanford colleague, Ray Briggs, and today we're thinking about what's in a game.
We're joined now by Thi Nguyen, professor of philosophy at the University of Utah and author of Games, Agency as Art. Thi, welcome to Philosophy Talk.
Hello. Thank you. I'm coming to you from my little basement closet, which is the only child-free zone in the house right now.
I'm glad you're in a safe space.
Yeah, safe space.
Now, you're an expert on the philosophy of games, but I suspect your interest isn't entirely theoretical. What's a game you're most excited about right now?
So since I wrote this book about games as an art form, people always ask me, like, do you mean like fancy graphics? And I think actually the game that best expresses what I'm excited about is this live action role-playing game called Sign, where you reenact as a group the historical moment in which a bunch of Nicaraguan deaf school children invented their own sign language. And the game is something you play in total silence, where you have to make up a new language of new signs with each other so that you can communicate with each other. That's the kind of thing I love.
So earlier, Josh and I were arguing about the value of games, and he was saying that they do important things for us, and I was giving him a hard time and saying games are pointless. So Thi, who's right?
I'm going to do the lame thing and say that you're both right. I think games can be incredibly valuable. They do something completely unique, and we often miss out because what they do is totally different from other art forms. They shape action. They sculpt action. They can make what we do and our decisions beautiful when they're good games. But I also believe, do you know Theodore Sturgeon's rule that 90% of everything is crap? He was a science fiction writer, and people would say well, the science fiction I read is crap. And he's like, yeah, but 90% of everything is crap. And I think that's true of games too. Most games are pointless, boring, mechanical diversions, but that's also true of most novels and most movies. Most of it is horrible, addictive, corporate crap. So, I mean, if you've only played Monopoly and you hate it, that's probably because you have good taste in games and you've been registering that everything you've been playing is crap your whole life. But there are good games out there.
Is there a quick way to summarize the difference between the games that are crap and the games that are not crap?
You're asking, this is the equivalent question is there a quick way to summarize what literature is good and what literature is bad? But right now, I think a lot of the games that I find crappy are these boring, repetitive grinds that get you to do one thing over and over again and just feed you a simple stream of points to make you feel good. They're these constructs just to feed your addiction. And the good games are games that let you experience totally new ways of being, new ways of thinking, or games that offer these stages for rich invention and creativity and not just clicking on a button to kill endless mice to get more experience points. This is speaking from experience as like a recovering addict to computer
A
role-playing
mouse
games, by the way.
killer.
Yeah.
A recidivist mouse killer. So I love this idea about good games giving us the opportunity to explore different modes of being. And a moment ago, you talked about sculpting agency. Can you explain what that is? What does it mean for a good game to sculpt agency?
Right. One of the reasons I got into thinking about games is, I mean, I've been playing games my entire life, from computer games to tabletop role-playing games to like board games. And I started reading this stuff where like philosophers and cultural critics were defending games, and they kept talking about stuff that I didn't recognize at all. They talked about how they were like offered interesting intellectual criticisms, or like they offered good stories, but they would like not talk about the thing that I cared the most about games, which is the experience of like in a good game, you're doing something interesting. You're inventing interesting ideas. You're inventing interesting moves. You're responding in elegant ways. And so a lot of people out there say something like game designers are amazing because they create worlds, or game designers tell stories. And I think that all underrates it. Game designers tell you who to be in the game. They tell you what your abilities are, but most importantly, so my favorite German board game designer, Rainer Knizia, says that the most important tool in his toolbox is the scores, because they set the motivations. So a game designer is telling you the person you're going to be in the game. They're telling you what to care about. And that, I think, is like the central, like weird magic of game design and like the art form of games.
You're listening to Philosophy Talk. Today we're thinking about what's in a game with Thi Nguyen from the University of Utah, author of Games, Agency as Art.
Do you play any video games, board games, or sports? What difference do they make in your life? Are there any games that people shouldn't play?
The game's afoot. More about serious play, plus comments and questions from our listeners when Philosophy Talk continues.
Could the games people play actually do us some good? I'm Ray Briggs, and this is Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything.
Accept your intelligence. I'm Josh Landy, and we're asking what's in a game with Thi Nguyen from the University of Utah, author of Games, Agency as Art.
We're using our home field advantage to pre-record this episode, so unfortunately, we can't take your phone calls. But you can always email us comments at philosophytalk.org. Or you can comment on our website, where you can also become a subscriber and gain access to our library of more than 500 episodes.
So, T, there's lots of good pastimes out there and lots of things that spark our imagination and cultivate our skills, like my favorite thing, literature. So what makes games special?
One of the things I think really helped me understand the specialness of games is the great American philosopher John Dewey talking about what art was. And he thinks that like Dewey has this theory that like every art is the crystallization of like a different part of daily life. Like fiction crystallizes like the events of your life, and painting crystallizes like looking around and seeing stuff. And I think games crystallize action. Like they shape our doings and our decidings and our thinkings. And that's just a completely different art form, right? Like literature is about seeing things from other people's perspectives, and games is about jumping into a different way of being practical and acting from inside of it.
We have an email from Quinn, who asks, is Animal Crossing a colonizer fantasy? I think it is. If so, is it harmful to engage with? So Animal Crossing is a video game for Nintendo, and you play a human who moves onto an island village that's populated by sort of animal characters, and you're given a loan to buy a house, which you're then supposed to pay back, basically by gathering items from the island, like fish and plants, and selling them for in-game currency, which you can also use to buy things.
Animal Crossing may be a colonizer fantasy, but we don't need to stretch that far. There are plenty of games that are actual, literal colonizer fantasies where you actually play a colonizer. Like the game Puerto Rico, like a super popular board game where you play someone who's setting up a plantation. And if you actually think about it, it's like really worrying and nasty. I mean, maybe the game simulates doing something terrible, but there's a background question here about like whether it's actually terrible to engage in a game in which it simulates you doing something terrible. And I'm not sure it's any worse than like watching The Sopranos, right? Or watching Breaking Bad. Like we have the capacity to distance ourselves from these things.
I think that's a really interesting question. It's something I've thought a lot about with things like The Sopranos, mafia movies, cases in film and literature. As a kid, I played a game, a Lord of the Rings game, where one player had to be Sauron.
Yeah.
So at some point, it's your turn. You're the bad guy, and maybe you do, maybe you don't want to do that. But is it automatically harmful? I think some people would say it's automatically harmful. Some people would say it's neutral. I think some people would say it's beneficial because you get to know your enemy better or something like that. Do you think there's a case for that optimism?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that games do is they let you experience different practical modes and you can learn them from a lot of different ways. Like, here's something that you might enjoy knowing. I'm a philosopher, but when I started philosophy, I was a really crappy philosopher. I mean, I was terrible. Like, I had deep
I
interest,
don't
but like,
believe that.
no, I mean, the thing that philosophers can do where they think ahead and anticipate, like I didn't do that. I was like this sloppy, romantic, gushy kid. And then I played chess, right? And chess like concentrates you because it's such a focused environment. It concentrates you and forces you to do this look ahead thing. And I think like one of the things that's interesting about games is they offer these really precise slices of being practical, and they force you into it and you can learn that mode. So like I learned how to survive graduate school from chess. And I also think like, I mean, it's not just for your own use. Like you can use it to simulate. I mean, this is maybe you'll think this is kind of a weak defense, but I played some pretty nasty Machiavellian games where I play like an evil capitalist overlord, and then like that mode is actually totally usable to me, like in life, to simulate like people that are trying to destroy my department. Right, the business school is trying to defund the philosophy department. I know how they're thinking because I've simulated them in a game.
Right.
Right. So this suggests that like one of the benefits of games is that they allow you to practice skills in this like really targeted way. And then you could recast the question about whether there are games that you shouldn't play as like, are there skills that are bad to practice? Like, is it sometimes bad to practice thinking in a Machiavellian way? Or are there other skills that you just like, maybe first person shooters, like maybe I shouldn't practice shooting people?
I mean, a lot of people say that you practice skills in games, but I think that's actually kind of a weaker way to put it because games just don't make you do something, they make you adopt a different goal. So it's not just a skill, it's like a package of practicing a skill inside a certain goal. Like the board game Diplomacy is the package of the skill of speech and political manipulation against like put against the background goal of like trying to get people to do what you want, right? And like that package, I mean, that's actually why it's particularly dangerous because you're actually stepping into a mode where you think like, right, my goal here is to beat everybody else.
I love that. And of course, that's a morally neutral goal at best, right?
Right.
But it strikes me there are a lot of habits or capacities that I think are just good that it could plausibly get from games. I think of improv. I do some improv sometimes very badly, and that seems like a space where you're practicing risk taking and teamwork and tolerating failure and creativity. I want to ask you a broader question about skills from games. What do you think about that? So there's a famous Dutch historian, Johan Huizinga, who, of course, you cite in your book, a great theorist of games, who says that when you're playing a game, one is always knower and dupe at once. So you're sort of absorbed in the game, and you're taking it really seriously, but you also have one foot firmly outside.
Right.
Do you think that's an important mental capacity? I mean, that's something we're practicing from a super early age, right? These games of make-believe that children play. Do you think that could potentially cultivate in us a really important psychological capacity to step back from our own beliefs or heart beliefs?
Yeah, I mean, the super interesting thing to me about games is that in games you have to enter into an alternate mode of being where you focus on a different goal and focus on different abilities. And if you play a lot of games, I think you actually get practice stepping in to these like focus states and then stepping back from them. And I think that's actually like one of the most valuable things that like a life with games can give you is this kind of fluidity with your cares and fluidity with your focuses. So in normal life, I think like we're just constantly surrounded by our values are really unclear. Our values are like rich and subtle. And then suddenly in a game, we know exactly what we're doing and exactly what we're trying to do. And we know exactly how we're done because the game tells us how many points we made. And that's like really satisfying. But it's something we actually need in daily life. Like, I mean, I think a lot of people like they put on a Fitbit because the Fitbit gets them to do something because they know exactly what they're doing. But it's also really important to be able to step back from it. And I think one thing a game can get you to practice is leaping into this very narrow, very precise way of looking at the world, and then stepping back from it and assessing it in a much richer way.
You're listening to Philosophy Talk. Today we're asking what's in a game with Thi Nguyen from the University of Utah, author of Games, Agency as Art.
So, T, I'm wondering when you talk about sort of the value of gaining flexibility by adopting new goals and sort of being able to focus yourself down on achieving them. I'm wondering if the value that comes from like the games helping you to do a good thing in your life can come apart from the aesthetic value of a game. So I remember actually learning to touch type with these like touch typing games that were extremely good at teaching me a skill and were also really crappy as games. Like they were super boring. I think I learned to Mavis Beacon and she was awful.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, like a lot of people when they talk about games and have this kind of moralistic and social worry, the thing they most want to say is, what can I learn from a game? But I think that's for people that study other parts of like, I think for people that study literature and movie, if your first question is, what's the educational value? You've missed like a huge amount of it. I think this idea that games shape action points us to one of the ways that games uh, are really unique artistically. So what the game often does is it creates a practical scenario that makes it really likely that your own actions are going to be beautiful or graceful or elegant or thrilling or even funny, right? So games are this really unique kind of art where instead of the artist making an object and you look at the object and you're like, oh, that object is beautiful, the game gets you to do certain things, and then you're the one that's beautiful. Like you're the ones that elegant. It draws those beauties out of you, and it like sculpts your scenario so that your own actions and inventions can be rich and thrilling. And I think like that's I mean, there are these beauties to our practical action that surround our lives. I mean, I bet you that a lot of us are in philosophy precisely because you have these moments where suddenly like all the ideas snap into focus and everything is super elegant and super beautiful. Or like, I remember this moment where a car careened into my lane and I just like dodged around it. And I just had this feel at that moment that just like everything about my reactions was happening perfectly. But that almost never happens in life because the world is crap and we barely fit it. And the whole point about games is that in games, a designer can create who you are and what you want and your environment to match so that games can concentrate the possibility of these moments of your own elegance.
I love this. I want to agree with you, but then I also want to read an email that challenges both of our optimism, right? So my agreement is, Huizinga says, into the confusion of life, a game brings a temporary limited perfection. I think it's lovely. And I think it goes along with what you're saying, right? That the magic circle of gameplay is a kind of glimpse of utopia. It's like a moment of order, a moment where you have these skills and what you do is beautiful and elegant. And it's a space of sociability where you're in harmony with your opponent. You're grateful to your opponent for trying to beat you, and values are so clear. And so I agree with all of that. But here's the email. It's from Maurice, who sent us a comment at philosophytalk.org. And he says, I love games. I enjoy playing them and watching them. However, games have become a powerful metaphor in our society that's helped to erode the complexity of our moral thinking. The moral conditions of life are too nuanced to allow game metaphors to dominate our social and political thinking. What do you think about that potential dark side to games?
I totally think that's right. I mean, So a lot of people worry about whether games will make people more violent. And I think there's actually plenty of psychological evidence that that doesn't happen. And one of the reasons it happens is because the violence in a game is fictional, and most of us have the capacity to screen off fictional acts. Like, it's the same reason why we don't get violent from watching The Sopranos. But I think there's something. So Jesper Jewell, who's a really good game scholar, his way of putting it is that he says games are half real. So if I headshot you in a first person shooter in a game, fictionally, I've killed you, but in reality, I have scored over you and scored points on you. And the thing that I think, the real thing, the thing that we might export is this sensation of, I mean, in games, it's so glorious because you know exactly what you're doing and you can feel those points coming in. And the real thing I'm worried about is exporting that attitude outside of games. In the book, I think like the great ending slogan of the book is like, I'm not worried about games making serial killers. I'm worried about games making Wall Street bankers. And I'm like super worried that like if the bad effect of games is that you'll export this expectation that the world will be crisp and clear and quantified, and suddenly you'll walk out and instead of like deciding for yourself like what you really care about, you'll immediately be attracted to institutions that just feed you points, like capitalism. Or if you're an academic, suddenly get obsessed with citation rates. Or if you're on Twitter and you'll just get obsessed with like maximizing your likes and follows. Like that's the attitude that I'm worried about. And part of the reason I worry about it is because in games, you get to have this moment where, because they're such secluded spaces, it's okay to just go all out and use everything in the game to achieve that one purpose. But if you export that attitude to like Twitter, you will help to destroy the world.
We have a question from Miles in San Francisco. Miles asks, is it ever permissible to play to lose, like letting a child win? Choosing the most beautiful move instead of the winning one? Or tanking out of defiance or protest? Maybe that's a solution to our previous problem of taking the game too seriously.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's interesting because it's not all games, but I think some games, the games only work if everyone is genuinely trying to win. But it's not like there's only one way to play a game, right? Like, what's really interesting to me is in a lot of games, I think we actually are all playing to lose in a really complicated way. So this is like, there's the most important moment in the book philosophically for me is this moment where I'm trying to figure out like what the purpose is for playing games. And I think there are two different approaches to playing games. One is called achievement play, and achievement play is when you're playing for the value of winning. And one is called striving play. And striving play is when you're temporarily taking an interest in winning for the fun or the interest of the struggle. You don't really care about winning, but you just pretend to, deep in your heart, you care about winning temporarily just so you can be involved in the struggle. So a lot of people don't actually think this is real, and here's my argument that it's real. Consider the following category: stupid games. So a stupid game is a game where the fun part is failing, but it's only fun if you're actually trying to win. So examples of stupid games are like Twister, the children's game of telephone, a lot of drinking games, right? So think about Twister. The part that's great, the part that you want is when you fall, because that's what's funny, right? But it's only funny because it's a failure, and it's only a failure if you're actually trying to win. So I think we actually do this really weird thing where we are actually, in some sense, playing to lose, but the only way that it's like fun to lose is if we like make ourselves so absorbed in the attempt to win that we kind of forget that we're trying to lose. So, but then when we lose, we're like, that was the point, and then we laugh. And that's also like most good drinking games.
That is fantastic. I'll drink to that. You're listening to Philosophy Talk. Today we're thinking about what's in a game with Thi Nguyen from the University of Utah, author of Games, Agency as Art.
Have you made exercise into a game? Did it help? Should games take over more of our lives, or should we grown-ups just put away childish things?
Your life as a game, plus commentary from Ian Scholes, the 60-second philosopher, when Philosophy Talk continues. Even as Space Invaders just cooks your brain, maybe other games have more to offer. I'm Josh Landy, and this is Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything.
Accept your intelligence. I'm Ray Briggs. Our guest is Thi Nguyen from the University of Utah, and we're asking, what's in a game?
So, T, we've been talking a lot about the benefits of existing games, but where do games go from here? If you were writing a game, what would you want it to look like?
I see both like a truly amazing thing that games can do and like a hellscape that games can bring us. So you can decide what you want to talk about. Like looking at the games world right now, the games are so I keep seeing new games that are incredibly innovative. By the way, I just want to be clear. A lot of the AAA video games that I've been seeing are really boring. They just seem to get you to do the same kinds of actions, but with fancier and fancier graphics. The games that seem really interesting to me, there's parts of the board game world and parts of the role playing world that just are spitting out these brilliant, innovative designs that create like new kinds of sociality. They create like new ways of relating to each other and collaborating with each other. And those are amazing. And the thing that I'm most afraid of is corporations' gaming activities, because I think if you actually understand why games are good, then you'll see that gamification is actually like the most terrifying thing coming down the pike.
Do you think that this has not already happened with social media?
Yes, I think it's kind of funny because a lot of people say to me, "Oh, you work on games. You think games are good. You must love gamification." And I'm like, "Look, if there's anything I understand about games, it teaches me that Twitter is like one of the most dangerous things in human existence." And the reason is what makes games so wonderful is you get this experience of being absolutely dedicated to a goal and not having to worry about everything else. And you get that because there's such a simple scoring mechanism, and all you have to do is care about that. So when you go over to Twitter, right, what Twitter does is you get that gamified trickle where you keep heaping up points and like you make something and you see like more people are liking it and it feels so good, but it only feels good if you care about those points. But those points aren't the same as like the rich value of communication, right? Those points are a really, really narrow goal. They're just the goal of popularity. I think the more Twitter gets its hooks on us, the more it's going to change what we value and change what we care about communication for.
Let me, for a few of us going down the dark path, but let me come back to some of the more positive thoughts we'd had a moment ago. So you were talking about the potential for games to choose the happy path of new forms of sociability. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, because it seems to me that when people talk about the morally positive outcomes of games, they're talking about three things, right? One is games that try to teach us lessons, and Monopoly, of course, did that. Unfortunately, it seems like it backfires a lot of the time. And then there's the kind of simulation, right? I get to kind of learn the mind of the enemy. We were talking about that in relation to diplomacy and stuff like that. But then there's also, I think, most importantly, the social aspect, that we aren't just playing by ourselves usually. We're playing at least with one person, sometimes with multiple people, and we get together and we collaborate. And so do you think that the games that exist currently and the games on the horizon are doing it right? They're encouraging healthy forms of sociability? What do you think?
Totally depends on the game. There are a lot that I think create these very simplified relationships, but there are other ones, especially the indie tabletop role-playing world is full of these fascinating games. Like there's a game called The Quiet Year. And in The Quiet Year, some of you are collectively playing the entire citizenry and world of a small village surviving after the apocalypse. And you play like thematic elements. So one of you might for a while play like fear, and another one of you might play like a pandemic coming through, and you together like draw a map where you put in different outposts and events and emotional moods in the world. And when you do this, when you like play a township together, like you get this completely different relationship to other people than you would if you were just trying to shoot each other points or something like that. It's those games. Oh, the game that I think you should be most interested in is the game Microscope. So Microscope was a game built in the role-playing world for people to collaboratively create the history of the world they were going to play in. And it's this incredible game where you start putting events into history, and then you start drilling down and asking questions about how they connect. And when you ask such a question, all of you have to invent roles and act for a while until you find out what happened in history. And that's the experience of that is like, it's not like any other relationship I've had with people before, the ability to like collaboratively create a whole historical epic together.
I wanted to ask about games that are sort of meta or do commentary on themselves as games. So you kept talking about sort of boring games that have you do the same action over and over again.
Right.
And that made me think of the Flash game Loved from 2010, which is deliberately boring. So you have a character whose graphics are not that fancy, and the character basically uh you get asked like for an option, like I think you get asked so are you a boy or a girl, and then whichever one you decide, it decides, oh, I'm going to make you the other one, and then it periodically says like mean things to you as you try to navigate yourself over these spikes. And actually, I've played it. It
Right.
feels terrible, but it's sort of terrible in
Right.
this interesting way that is sort of about what it would be like to be treated that way by another human being. So that's a really so. Is there something to be said about games that are like from inside are really unpleasant, but from outside teach you some bigger thing and are sort of aesthetically interesting?
There are plenty of games that are profoundly unpleasant most of the way through, but are interesting. These are precisely the games that academics and cultural critics seize on because it's really easy to point out like the literary meaning, but they're often really boring to play agentially, right? There are not many decisions. And I like one of the things that actually got me into the games project was there are all these people that seem to want games to be serious, and the way they did it was they made them more like movies or more like texts. And the way they did that was to strip out most of the options and make it so fixed that they could load meaning into it in the way that we're used to loading meaning into movies and text. And it works and it's recognizable, but I kind of think it's like artistically cheap. I mean, I should be careful. I haven't played the game you're talking about, but I've seen a lot of games like this that, you know, culture critics and scholars will be like, oh, that's really interesting. I can say lots of things about it. Where I think a lot of the times it's harder to say things about games that are really innovative in their mechanics and agency, partially because we don't have the critical language for it. It's so unique. And so it's hard for people reared, like I was, on literary and film criticism and philosophical criticism to have something to say. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think it's a great strength of your approach that it doesn't totally depend on a game having this sort of built-in moral architecture or something. I'm curious about games like The Walking Dead, where they're superficially fun, but they also like they give you options and they tell you later what choices you made and make you feel bad about yourself. I think there are some cases like that. But can I come back a little bit to the wonderful thing you were saying right before the break? You raised some lovely some delicious paradoxes about the way human beings relate to games, right? One of which you cited before about how the fun is in failing, but you can't fail unless you try to succeed in the silly games. There's also if you try too hard, you ruin the game. But if you don't try, you also ruin the game. And then the one I really wanted to ask you about, which is sort of paradox of activity. What counts is the activity, but you wouldn't have the activity unless you had the goal, right? What counts is the journey, but there's no journey without a destination.
Right.
Can you say a little bit more about that? Like, what's the paradox there?
So it's super. I mean, I think the stuff you're referring to comes from Bernard Suits. So Bernard Suits is this incredible philosopher who was kind of misunderstood in his time. He wrote in the 70s this book called The Grasshopper, which is like the
Fantastic
great
book.
philosophical. It's a philosophical account of games, and he has this definition of a game. And the quick version of it is that games are taking on voluntarily unnecessary obstacles to create the experience of trying to overcome them. And it's incredible. I mean, so much of the stuff I've thought about games comes from this analysis. And what he's saying is basically like, look, if you're running a marathon, the point of running the marathon is not just to get to that location in space and time where the finish line is, because there's so many easier ways to get there. You could like hire a taxi, right? Call a Lyft, you'll get there really easily. The point of running the marathon is to do it under your own steam. So one way, the philosophical way he puts it is, and I think this is close to what you're saying, the goal of the game is actually partially constituted by the obstacles that you have to take on. So in other words, the constraint of
You're
running
deliberately making it hard for yourself.
Yeah, you're deliberately making it hard for yourself. So there's this big question about like, why would you ever do that? And some people have the answer, oh, it's because doing anything hard is worthwhile. And I have the answer that, oh, it's because by putting on constraints, you're sculpting a different kind of action. Um, and that action can be like, you can push things into a really beautiful space. Like I'm a rock climber. Here's an interesting example. So rock climbing, a lot of the most kinds of rock climbing happen now are called free climbing. And what free climbing is, it's not the same as free soloing, which a lot of people confuse it with. Free climbing is when you ascend the rock using only your hands and feet on features of the rock without pulling on the rope. And like beginners will often say like, oh my God, what a stupid constraint. Why can't I just pull on the rope and just go up more easily? And the answer is actually, if you pull on the rope, then every rock climb is the same motion and it's really boring. But if you forbid yourself from pulling on the rope, then every set of rock features pushes you to do and invent different kinds of motion and forces you into all kinds of very specific, inventive, flowing, sensitive problem solving. So I think, like, does it make sense? I think the constraints are there, and part of the reason the constraints are there is to make you do a certain kind of activity, to sculpt that activity, to push you into a form of moving or thinking that you wouldn't normally do otherwise.
T, this has been amazingly educational, but also a lot of fun. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Our guest has been Thi Nguyen, professor of philosophy at the University of Utah, and author of Games, Agency as Art. So Ray, what are you thinking now?
So I know at the beginning of the show I made fun of games, but actually I think that even simple games have hidden depths. There are the depths that T was talking about with agency, but there are also mathematical depths to games. And I've been revisiting Martin Gardner's mathematical games columns from Scientific American, which are republished in a series of books. And he writes about games that include tic-tac-toe, chess, tangrams, mazes, all this stuff I really enjoyed playing with as a kid. And he uses them to explain really interesting mathematical concepts. And so learning the rules of those games is easy, but then those rules turn out to have consequences that are beautiful and surprising.
You know, I love those games. I used to play them with my dad, who's a mathematician, and we had the best nerdy fun. Thank you so much for reminding me of them. I have to go back to those. We're going to put links to everything we've mentioned today on our website, philosophytalk.org, where you can also become a subscriber and gain access to our library of more than 500 episodes.
And if you have a question that wasn't addressed in today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send it to us at comments@philosophytalk.org, and we might feature it on the blog. Now, it's a race against the clock for Ian Scholes, the 60-second philosopher.
Ian Scholes. I've always liked games, not sports, but games. Played them all my life. Never had any mixed feelings about them unless I was losing. I suppose you could consider games a waste of time, but depending on your perspective, what isn't? Eating is time spent away from sex. Sex is time spent not working. Working is a fool's game. But without fool's games, how would you part a fool from his money, which makes the world go round? Trouble comes up when we think that life itself is like a game, when in fact, games only provide fleeting metaphors for moments in our lives. Metaphors like 52 pickup risk, 3D chess, busted flush, draw to an inside straight, choke at bat, knock out a homer, strike out, feed the kitty, raise the bar, set this one out, see, pass, raise, toss the dice, bet the farm, throw on the deck, cash in your chips, do not pass go. Life could be like a game, but only in flashes, and we don't know the rules. Only games have rules. Also, if agency is assigned to your avatar, it's a game. In other words, bishops go diagonally, rooks go at right angles, queens go anywhere, ditto kings, but only one square at a time. Unlike life, you never ever leave the board, and you know how many spaces you can go, you know what stands in your way, you know your turn. And always remember, your avatar has no feelings, and neither should you. The poker face hides your tells. The point is, foolish or not, we often bring that game-playing energy to life, and some of that is fine. We can certainly add the playing of games to the list of pleasures life offers. Without pinochle, my days would have been diminished. The slapping of cards on a table can be as eloquent as a conversation. A good way to get to know children is to play a game with them. Parties can be more fun with twister, charades, murder, spin the bottle. And, as Lewis Carroll wrote, kings and queens are nothing but a pack of cards, as are we all. How ironic that playing cards exist to provide us with metaphors, free on demand. And we can thank our lucky stars, we have Parcheesi to give us hope that winning means we end where we began. Back when I worked for a video game company, I used to amuse myself in my cubicle wondering what life would be like if it was more like a game. I could have branched out. I could have stopped in Nevada on my way to California, lived my days as a dealer in high-end poker games, married a Keno girl, then a show girl, then a bitter divorcee like me, had 5 kids among us, lived gingerly on tips and bribes, all without showing my face outside the cubicle at the video game company where I was wondering what life would be like as a game. If it was all a game, I would not be here now. Murdered for my insurance, I'd be on the last episode of Forensic Files before you hit the sack. Absurd, unlike games, which have designers around who think a lot about what a game should be. Is there winning? Even if not, you can be sure designers always have an end game in mind. Final boss or not, failure is all on you. Some phenomena recently seem determined to convert life into a game. I'm thinking of QAnon, the weird yet massive online thingy that passes along cryptic messages from Q, a secret government guy, and has birthed a massive secret parallel world that has conspiracies, a living JFK Jr., pedophilia, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump as the secret savior of the world. It's all coming down soon, apparently, because Trump will either be gone or reelected. And either way, time is running out for this passel of nonsense. You watch the show, you solve the clues, but as in a game, you just sit there. You win QAnon by watching. So what is a game? If the box says game, there's one sign. If the box says life, on the other hand, well, what kind of game is that? It's a game by Milton Bradley, silly. You pick up children and money, throw it all in a car, and drive until you hit Nevada. Then you throw it all away, get a job as a poker dealer, go in debt, and wake up from your nap in the cubicle of the video game company saying, whoa, that was close. I gotta go.
Philosophy Talk is a presentation of KALW, local public radio San Francisco, and the trustees of Leland Stanford Junior University, copyright 2020.
Our executive producer is Tina Pamantwan.
The senior producer is Devin Strolovich. Laura McGuire is our director of research. Cindy Prince-Baum is our director of marketing.
Thanks also to Merle Kessler, Angela Johnston, and Lauren Schechter.
Support for Philosophy Talk comes from various groups at Stanford University and from the partners at our online community of thinkers.
The views expressed, or misexpressed, on this program did not necessarily represent the opinions of Stanford University or of our other funders.
Not even when they're true and reasonable. The conversation continues on our website, philosophytalk.org, where you too can become a partner in our community of thinkers. I'm Josh Landy.
And I'm Ray Briggs. Thank you for listening.
And thank you for thinking.